Have you noticed the law of return of all things around you? The electron within an atom revolves around the nucleus in an orbit. The atoms, as they vibrate within the molecules, return to their original starting point. The Earth returns to its exact location around the Sun every 365 days. And this solar system returns in its movement within the galaxy. Everything follows the law of return. Why should we be an exception? So we return, we come back to this world at a due time and hour, life after life. This is the law of return.
You really mean that we have to forcibly return life after life to live in this world?
Yes, facts are facts. At the moment of death, the angel of death always comes to our bed. 3 things go to the graveyard. First, the physical corpse. If it is buried, it decomposes slowly. If it is burnt, then obviously it decomposes immediately. Second, the vital body. It escapes from the physical body with the last exhalation. Such a vehicle floats above the grave and decomposes little by little as the physical body disintegrates. Third, the ex-personality. We have already explained that the ex-personality dissolves little by little through time. What continues and does not go into the grave is the ego, the myself, the oneself. The ego is just a heap of devils, of psychic aggregates, of defects. The only decent thing that exists deep inside all those cavernous entities that make up the ego is the essence, the part of soul that we have. Why does the ego not die on its own? Because it is trapped inside itself, the consciousness. Consciousness, as we have explained before, is eternal, immortal. And since the consciousness is trapped inside the ego does not go to the grave, does not die on its own. So after the mathematical operation of death is finished, the values or the egos are the only thing left. Obviously, the sum of values attract and repel one another, according to the law of universal magnetism. They float within the atmosphere of the world. Eternity, therefore, opens its jaws to swallow the ego when a person dies, and later expels it, gives it back to time, when the same soul returns to a new birth. In the precise instant of death, in the moment when the deceased exhales his last breath, he projects an electro-psychic design of his personality. This design continues in the hypersensitive regions of nature, and later, it saturates a fecundated egg. For this reason, when we return into a new physical body, we possess personal features which are very similar to the ones we had in our previous life. Now, when entering a new physical vehicle, the law of karma starts acting. For there exists neither an effect without a cause, nor a cause without an effect. The angels of life are in charge of connecting the silver cord of the returning soul to the fecundating zoosperm. The essence is thus connected to the germinal cell by means of the silver cord. And since this cell splits into 2, and those 2 into 4, and the 4 into 8, and so on, in the process of foetal gestation in the mother's womb, it is clear that the sexual energy becomes, in fact, the basic agent of this cellular multiplication. The disembodied person who is preparing to take a new physical body does not enter the fetus or the womb, he only reincorporates in the instant when the creature is born, in the precise moment when he draws his first breath. It is very interesting to see that disembodiment comes with a dying man's last exhalation, and that we re-enter a new organism with the first inhalation. So this is how the law of return brings us back to this world, to the starting point of life in this world.
So really we have no choice in the matter of whether we should be born, where and how we should be born?
It is completely absurd to assert that one chooses voluntarily the place where one must be born again. The reality is quite different. It is precisely the lords of the law, the agents of karma, who select the exact place for us. Our home, the family, the nation, etc. If the ego could choose the place, the location, or the family, etc. for its new reincorporation, then the ambitious, proud, mean, covetous people would seek the palaces, the millionaires' houses, the rich mansions, and the world would be all wealth and sumptuousness. There would be no poor, pain, and bitterness would not exist. Nobody would pay karma. We would all be able to commit the worst crimes without being punished by the celestial justice. The crude reality of facts is that the ego has no right to choose the place or family where it must be born. Each of us must pay what we owe. Law is law, and the law is executed. It is very regrettable that so many famous writers of contemporary spirituality assert that everybody has the right to choose the place where they have to be born again. But they are mistaken. If this were true, who would want to choose a poor house and suffer? Dissolve your egos, liberate your consciousness, and you will be able to verify by yourselves, in a conscious way, the law of the eternal return of all things.
So what happens to people between death and returning to a new life?
Quite sincerely, from my heart, I can tell you the following. The deceased normally live in the limbo, in the antechamber of hell, in the region of the dead, the inferior astral, a region fully represented by all the subterranean grottos and caverns of the world, which connected or interlaced in an intimate way form a whole altogether. The state in which the deceased find themselves is regrettable. Their consciousness is completely asleep. They stroll everywhere and firmly believe that they are alive. They are not conscious of their death. After disembodiment, shopkeepers continue in their shops, drunks in taverns, prostitutes in brothels, etc., etc. It would be impossible that such people, these unconscious sleepwalkers, could afford to choose the place where they must be born again. The most natural thing is that they are born knowing neither at what time nor how, and that they die completely unconscious. The shadows of the dead are multiple. Each disembodied person is a heap of unconscious shadows that are unaware of the present, that are bottled up amongst all their dogmas, amongst egotistical interest, amongst animal passions, amongst vices, etc., etc.
But if this were to be true, that the ego returns to this world, and if the ego is nothing but our mistakes, the demons inside, then the children that are born should be full of evil as well?
The human being has a 3% of free essence and a 97% of essence that is bottled up amongst the eyes. In newborn babies, only the small amount of free essence is reincorporated and expresses itself during the first 3 or 4 years of childhood. And then the creature is beautiful, sublime, innocent, happy, sensitive, pure, clairvoyant. The essence gives self-consciousness and inner beauty to the child. The diverse returning eyes circle around the newborn. They freely come and go everywhere. They would like to penetrate the organic machine, but that is not possible, as long as the new personality has not been created. It is indispensable to comprehend that the new personality is created precisely during the first 7 years of childhood, and that it strengthens with time and experiences. Unfortunately, the ego starts expressing itself little by little when we approach the age of 7, and it manifests wholly when the new personality has been totally created. This is how slowly the most beautiful of children start acting crazy, becoming erratic, and start showing all the signs of the egos that have inevitably returned to the child as the child grows up gradually. Now imagine, how happy would we all be if we had no ego? If only the essence expressed itself in us. Indisputably, there would be no pain. The earth would be a paradise, an Eden, something ineffable, sublime. The return of the ego to this world is truly nauseating. It's horrifying, abominable. The ego in itself radiates sinister, tenebrous, vibrating waves which are not pleasant at all. In the absence of egos, you can smell the most beautiful fragrance of the essence in newborn babies. They are all fragrant. I say that everybody, as long as they have not dissolved the ego, is more or less black. Though they may boast about being saints and virtuous people, the reality is that all the egos are hidden in the subconscious. And that is why people can't see them. But the egos manifest when there is an opportunity or a trigger that provokes them.
Understood. So everything returns. Then does that mean that everything that happened before will happen again? And like this, it will always keep happening forever?
Yes, you are right. Time repeats itself. One sort of repetition is the one we've already described. But if we are to believe the Pythagoreans, there exists another sort of repetition. That means that I shall speak to you, and I shall sit exactly in this way, and everything will be the same as now, and the time will, supposedly, be the same. Because if the movements of the celestial bodies and many other things are the same, what happened before and what will happen later are also the same. This can also be applied to the repetition which is always the same. Everything is the same. We call this the law of recurrence. Everything happens as it happened before. What does it mean for us? Our life is like a film. Once the projection in this existence is over, we roll it up within its reel and take it with us to eternity. Re-entrance exists. Return exists. When we come back to this world, we project the same film, the same life on the table of existence. So we have successive existences, one after the other. But the film is the same. Therefore, a man is what his life is. If a man does not work on his own life, he is wasting his time in a miserable way. Only by eliminating the undesirable elements that we carry within can we make a work out of our life, with the possibility of repeating it again on the stage of a new existence. Within everyone's human personality, there always exist the values, or I's, that serve as a basis to the law of recurrence. Everything happens again as it happened, plus the results or consequences of our previous deeds. Since there are many I's from previous lives within everyone, we can assert in an emphatic way that each of them is a different person. Within a thief's personality, there exists a true cave of thieves. The serious thing is that each of these people, or I's, who live inside us come from ancient existences and have its own problems and commitments. The I, who had a love affair at the age of 30 in the past existence, in the new existence will wait for such an age to manifest. And when the moment arrives, it will seek the person of its dreams. Both people's eyes seek one another by means of telepathic waves. And then they meet again to repeat the same love affair in a mechanical way. This is really the mechanics of the law of recurrence. This is life's tragedy. Through thousands of years, the diverse characters meet again to repeat the same dramas, comedies, and tragedies. The human person is just a machine at the service of these eyes that have so many commitments. The worst thing of the whole question is that all these commitments of the people that we bear within are fulfilled without our understanding, quite unconsciously. Our human personality is, in this sense, similar to a chariot pulled by multiple horses. There are lives which repeat in a quite exact way, recurrent existences that are never modified. You can study the example of the exact recurrence in the lives of Abraham Lincoln and John F. Kennedy. Both American presidents lived and died in exactly the same way, only separated by a gap of 100 years in between them.
Can we ever do something to break free from this law of unceasing return? Or will we always be forced to return again and again?
Now you can understand why several avatars, messengers, prophets have always said that man is really not free. That we need to break free from the wheel of samsara that makes us return again and again to this world full of suffering and tears. The real freedom lies in breaking free from this wheel of samsara. The law of return. This is the highest freedom, higher than the economic freedom, higher than the political freedom, higher than any other type of freedom. So to break free from the law of return, we need to understand one thing. The only reason one has to return is the ego. The multiplicity of egos inside us brings us back and keeps us churning in the wheel of samsara. In no way could our life's comedies, dramas, and tragedies repeat on the screen of existence if the actors inside, the egos, did not exist. If we disintegrate the eyes of anger, the tragical scenes of violence inevitably come to an end. If we reduce the secret agents of greed to cosmic dust, the problems it causes will be totally finished. If we kill the eyes of pride, vanity, conceit, and self-importance, the ridiculous scenes of these defects will end due to the lack of actors. If we eliminate from our psyche the factors of laziness, inertia, and idleness, the horrifying scenes of this sort of defects will not be able to repeat due to the lack of actors. Huge banquets, drunkenness, etc. will finish due to the lack of actors. If we reduce to dust the nauseating eyes of greediness and gluttony, only in this way can we truly liberate ourselves. There is no other way.
So everyone has to follow this law of return. Are there any exceptions?
Yes, there are. Once a person has totally eliminated the psychic aggregates, the egos inside, the soul becomes truly free and is liberated from the wheel of samsara. This soul then goes to Brahma, the original starting point, as explained by Lord Krishna in the sacred book of Gita. If this soul later desires, it can come back by its own will to the samsara to fulfill a task. But it is not under any obligation to do so. This process would be called reincarnation. We must say that the being, the Lord who has incarnated in a perfect creature, can return, can reincarnate. It is well worthwhile to meditate on the following verse of Lord Krishna. O Bharat, whenever religion declines and irreligion prevails, I incarnate again. I reincarnate to protect the righteous, destroy the wicked, and establish religion. I reincarnate in different times. Therefore, the word reincarnation is very sacred. It must not be used in a careless way. Nobody would be able to reincarnate without having eliminated the ego first, without truly having a sacred individuality. Reincarnation is a very venerable word. In fact, it means the reincorporation of the divine into a man. Reincarnation is a repetition of such a cosmic event, a new manifestation of the divine. So, two conclusions are logically deduced from all the verses by Lord Krishna. Those who have dissolved the ego get to know Brahma and go to Brahma, and if they wish, they can return, reincorporate, reincarnate in order to work in the Father's great work. Those who have not dissolved the ego, the I, the myself, go after death along the path of smoke. They have to take birth again. They return. They reincorporate into this painful wheel of samsara. The great avatar, Krishna's doctrine, therefore teaches that only gods, demigods, divine kings, titans and devas reincarnate. Return is quite different. The return of kalpas, yugas, mahamavantaras, mahapralayas, etc. is unquestionable. It would be absurd to confuse reincarnation with return.